My name's Amit. I'm really, really happy to be here. Thank you, Delio. Thank you so much for your brilliant research. Very inspiring. Thank you, Valeria. Thank you, Mara. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Ivana, for this incredible event. I am in wonder that it got funded. How did you do it? I want the secret, because it's an amazing project. So my research in the past, I'd say about 10 years, has been in this practice, this social practice called jugaad, and and I'll talk a little bit about what it means. And it comes from a way of working around obstacles, working around the legal framework, for instance, of intellectual property, for instance, of what a vehicle should be. The framework of legality is constantly in question, and this is, of course, in the context of South Asia, where around 90% of the economy is out of the formal sector, is informal, cash-based economy. So this is a little bit about me, but I'm really... Who cares? Well, we care. Okay, so I do work on now. I'm trying to bring together two sets of researches right here, right now, and that is a set of researches that were on jugaad practices, these informalized workaround practices, and what I call a transformation in our individual and collective understanding of attention. And attention, I'll define a little bit what I mean by this, but this is what I'm trying to bring together. Let's see what happens. As I said, my current research interests are in attention, piracy, DIY hacker politics, and emancipatory organizing. I'm also involved in thinking about the financialization of attention, creativity, culture, and art. I'm very much influenced by the obsolescence of media technology, the forced obsolescence of media technology and racial capital, and what that means for our attention ecologies. And I'm deeply influenced by the Black radical tradition, post-colonial, decolonial, queer, and anarchist socialist practice, and Marxist criticism. So here are some of my questions. There's a lot of text, but I'm going to read it anyways. What are the conditions of psychic, collective, and technological individuation or becoming in affirmation of what I call intersectional emancipation? And by intersectional emancipation, I also want to say that emancipation is an ongoing process. It's an ongoing process that cannot be resolved through one identity or one form of social domination, say class, say race, say gender, say sexuality. In what sense is this a matter of bodily, embodied, and collective attention? I believe attention is an affect. It's a capacity to affect and be affected. How can we collectively create concepts and practices of socio-political attention useless for fascism, Zionism, Brahmanism, racist capitalism, capitalist racist ableism, heteropatriarchy, and settler colonialism? Is it a well-posed question? What is a well-posed question in relationship to these subaltern practices working around legalities, these violent frames of law, but also, of course, of social domination in the context of South Asia, in the context of India, that is very deeply rooted in what is called Savarna capitalism, upper caste capitalism, caste capitalism. So for me, this does not simply mean creating the conditions for what I would call a radically anti-extractivist attention, because of course we know that attention can be deeply extractive. It can be something that reinscribes the sovereignty of a universalized Eurocentric self. So extractivism is something that has to be questioned in the way in which we reconceptualize the practice of attention. It means as well inventing a jugaad attention. And so back to this word, jugaad. Jugaad is, it's very difficult to come up with an etymology of this term. If you look at etymological dictionaries in South Asia, sometimes they say, oh, it comes from Hindi. Sometimes they say it comes from Punjabi. Sometimes, but of course we know that the word is used in Bengali and many parts of the South Indian languages. Well, you must all have heard of this word jugar in Portuguese, right? Well, jugar, of course, means to play. And, of course, you know that the Portuguese colonized a good portion of South Asia for a while, and the places where this term, jugaad, comes and is being used very actively, Bombay and Western India, was precisely the place where the colonists were active, the Portuguese. It means working around through combinatory play. This is what I would give as a first approximation in terms of we think about the definition. Here is a vehicle, a jugaad vehicle, and this is from the quote here is from ChatGPT, and I'll read it out. Jugaad vehicles are homemade or locally made and are often made from spare parts like wooden planks and metal sheets. They are known for being low cost, but also having poor brakes and not being able to go faster than 60 kilometers an hour. Well, if you Google or search on the internet for this word jugaad or the images, well, all of these really nifty, fun-looking images come up, a little scary. You're like, really? You're going to do that with a pot and some candles? What are you doing? But it indicates something, that there's already a fetish of this term, and that jugaad and the practice of workaround in South Asia has precisely become a fetish for caste capitalism. I'm really was inspired by this phrase that I read on the Figure It Out, the Art of Living Through Systems Failure website. It was, the aim is to acknowledge the ingenuity that comes in finding a way out of an impossible situation. I think this is a fantastic way to also think about jugaad in the specific context of South Asia. So a hacker ethos governs much of subaltern, non-elite, Dalit, minority, working class, lower caste, feminist, queer economic production, circulation, distribution, consumption, and social reproduction, the entire circuit of racial capital. Developing tactical, collective, abstract, discrete diagrams, which I really love the diagrams and the fantastic set of diagrams in the exhibition. I'd strongly recommend you use them. Well, maybe, yeah, use them. It would be an excellent thing to use them as counter-engineering diagrams, right? We can think about a diagram as precisely that. I'm interested in how one conceptualizes the act of jugaading, right? What is happening in the act of jugaad through its multiscalar, gendered, subaltern, affective, and elite financialized ecologies. What can techno-perceptual assemblages do? This is what I believe jugaad as a practice helps us to pose, this question of what I call techno-perceptual assemblages, what Bernard Stiegler calls organological bodies. This is a question of the technological in relationship to social practice, which is, I think, for me, very important. Jugaad and it needs my face. I was looking at my phone, and your phone requires attention. To turn it on, there's this. I don't know if you've seen, but if you go into the settings of your phone, it won't turn your phone on until you pay attention to it. And I wonder how that's measured and so on and so forth. But, well, we can turn to that later. Repair and tinkering cultures. Jugaad is a tactic of post-para-capitalist repair, repurposing, hacking, and refusal. In the context of South Asia, there's a deep techno-animism that is enlivens everyday life, that is activated in everyday life, and it helps us to think about the enchantment of bodies, the enchantment of technologies in the everyday. But of course, we can think about enchantment as well in terms of the problem of fetishism. I'm very involved today in thinking about this problem of what the fetish is in racial caste capitalism, following, of course, the critique of commodity fetishism, but then Adorno's work and the people around Adorno. Lots of text, don't have to read it. Here's an example of what I mean of the fetish of jugaad, and that fetish, of course, is the neoliberal capture of jugaad as frugal innovation. Frugal innovation. I teach in a business school. I teach at a left-leaning neoliberal business school. Yeah, there is such a thing, and in East London, and a lot of what this business school that I teach in is involved in, of course, is thinking about social justice and equality and how to keep business running, right? But here's an example of the neoliberal capture of jugaad in the Indian context. Disruptive innovation, another fantastically fetishistic word. Disruptive innovation is not a new term, but we are practicing it with a different name, jugaad, a Hindi word for improvised solution. It follows a basic principle. It starts out as a cheaper alternative of a strategy and targets a market segment, the lower end, ignored by existing leading brands. This, of course, jugaad then becomes a way of bringing in subaltern populations as consumers, right? As consumers. I could read this quote, but it goes, it goes on. I mean, the fetishization of these practices is in some ways unending. Well, here's a book, Jugaad Innovation. The key principle of jugaad is simplicity, and it requires a deep understanding of consumers' needs and habits, right? So immediately you see how something like a resistant practice can then become this kind of fetish. And here's an example of what they mean. The mitti cool, and notice at the I don't know, you can see this image, but at the top, mitti cool already has a brand logo, right? And mitti cool, mitti means dirt. And so a jar made out of mitti, dirt, can cool the water without electricity. To attend to jugaad ecologies is necessarily to invent decolonizing diagrams of techno-perceptual assemblages. These are collective and co-created diagrams even when they are part of a singular or individuated aesthetic or art practice. Subjugated knowledges and subaltern autopoiesis, inventing, negentropic bifurcations. We can talk about entropy and negentropy, but it's really about how there are zones and traditions and cultures of resistance, and how we think about our solidarity with these cultures of resistance, these communities of resistance, and what they are doing in the circuit of racial caste capitalist valorization. My method has been what I would call an affective ethnography. I'm interested in thinking about affect as the capacity to affect and be affected, and jugaad is one of the ways in which a social practice that has emerged to affect and be affected in material, semiological, psychic, spiritual context, how that's emerged. That for me is a thinking of affective, the affective realm, and how to do an ethnography of it. But of course, I'm taken with Foucault's very important reminder that visibility is a trap. And this is, I think, came out brilliantly this morning in many of the talks, in the two talks and in the conversations. What do we mean by trap? Visibility as a trap means that precisely to bring the practice even into the realm of representation, you open it up precisely for fetishistic capture. Jugaad and the social synthesis. The social synthesis comes out of Alfredson Rettel's work and taken up by Adorno and post-Adornian criticism, the new reading of Marx people. I'm interested in thinking about these subaltern practices as what kind of synthesis is involved, a synthesis that is in some ways already post-capitalist, a sort of prefigurative synthesis. And in that sense, it calls to all of us to create a form of attention that is prefigurative. And I'm very much, I've been inspired by Valeria's forthcoming book, Pirate Care, and to think about forms of conviviality that are not reducible to the way in which social reproduction has become commodified in racial caste capital. And there's a bunch of topics. But I want to, So, I teach a course. I teach a course at the Dutch Art Institute called For a Revolutionary Becoming of Attention. And we try it, right? It's good. I think it's a good thing to try. What does it mean for you to think about your attention as a mode of your political and social becoming, right? Well, we do practical exercises. We do diagrams. People start with their phones. Check your usage on your phones. I encourage my students and the people I co-create research with to start with the ecologies, their attention ecologies in which they are, and to hack into them. How do you hack into your own attention ecology? This is, of course, a question of both a singular question of how I'm going to do it, but it's also a collective question. In that sense, one's habits, or the specificity of a habit, is always, for me, a social question. Okay. So I just very briefly, I wanted to touch on what I think is an important element of this other aspect of this work, and that is attention and how one defines attention. And attention to the political ontologies of autonomous pirate care, transnational hacker collectives, Dalit Jugaad workaround ecologies in context of class and caste struggle, and revolutionary joy is to reactivate the Indo-European etymology of attention. The Latin attendere means to bend, notice, to turn, stretch towards. And this term, the understanding of attention as literally a embodied stretch. This is picked up on in Tim Ingold's work, recent work, but I'm interested in thinking about this as not a question of representation, but actually in terms of a sensory motor circuit. That attention is a sensory motor circuit that breaks with the regime of representation or representational capture. Of course, I'm drawing on the work of Deleuze, Guattari, Masumi, Manning, and so on and so forth. And so the word, of course, so I keep saying of course, but there's nothing of course with it. But attendere is the Latin in Sanskrit, the correlate or the related term is adhyan. And this is, of course, a photo that I took in Bhopal, India in 2022, and written in Devanagari script is dhyan. Now, dhyan has a deeply religious connotation today in Hindutva-dominated, Modi-dominated India. But this is an advertisement for advertising. This is an advertisement for advertising, right? So it means dhyan. You can capture people's attention, 100% visibility, 100% response. In Orientalist yoga practice today, dhyan means mindfulness, meditation, or concentration. I believe today mindfulness is a form of labor discipline. I'll leave it at that. I think that's it. That's it. Well, I have a lot more to say. I could say a lot more, but I think I'm going to stop right there. Thank you for your attention.